The Los Angeles Chargers are off to an impressive 5-3 start, and with that has come a lot of praise from a lot of different people on this LA Chargers team. However, I hate to be the pessimist here, but I kind of think that this Chargers team is maybe a tad bit overrated. So in today's video, we're going to examine what the LA Chargers have done this season, as well as talk about what they might do in the future. But if you guys do go on to enjoy the video, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button, but let's hop into it. Now I want to clarify what I mean by saying that this team might be a tad bit overrated. I still think this team is good. I just don't think they're as good as some people have made them out to be. Some people claim that this is a top 10 team in the NFL, when I just don't think there's any real argument to have them at that level. With that said, I do think this team is right around top 15, maybe top 17-ish, and I think this team could easily make a playoff spot given what their schedule looks like, which we'll talk about later. However, to start off the video, I think it's very important that we just briefly cover a couple of statistics to sort of set the groundwork for what we're going to talk about throughout the video. On the offensive side of things, this offense isn't terribly impressive statistically speaking. They're averaging 19.9 points per game, which puts them at number 24 in the NFL. They're averaging 315 yards a game, which puts them at number 22, and they're only scoring around 2.0 touchdown per game, which puts them at number 23. I will say this, I think the offense has been playing better the past couple weeks. Justin Herbert has legitimately looked like an awesome quarterback throughout the season. In fact, I would venture to say that maybe you can bring him up in some MVP conversations. So far this year, he has 1,725 passing yards, 10 touchdowns to only 1 interception, and those are some great statistics, and I think he's playing some really good football. It also does help that J.K. Dobbins is having a bit of a breakout season on the offensive end. However, I think the most interesting and most maybe shocking thing about this team has been how good this defense has actually been. On the defensive side of things, they're only giving up 12.6 points per game, which ranks number 1 in the NFL. They're only giving up 303.8 yards per game, which puts them at number 8 in the NFL. And opponents are only scoring 1.3 touchdowns per game, which also puts them at number 1 in the NFL. Regardless of the level of play that they're going up against, they're still going up against NFL talents with NFL coaches, and they're still holding these NFL teams to really poor production on the offensive end. I think you got to give flowers to their defense. It is easily a top 10 defense in the NFL. Now let's go ahead and kind of examine what they've done so far this year. We talked about some of the statistics. Let's go ahead and go through every single game, just game by game. Now that we know who they've gone up against, whether the teams they've beaten are good or bad, let's go through it week by week. In week 1, you beat the Las Vegas Raiders 22-10. Now, Las Vegas is arguably one of the worst teams in the NFL, so beating them by 12 points isn't terribly impressive, but hey, a win is a win. Of course, that is throughout the entire portion of this video. If you win a game, great, but you gotta beat these bad teams by more, in my opinion. Then in week 2, you had a decisive victory against maybe, again, the worst team in the NFL in the Carolina Panthers, 26-3. Then after that, you had a 2-game losing streak against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 20-10, and the Kansas City Chiefs, 17-10. Again, adding the context of how good this defense has been, you held both Pittsburgh and Kansas City to 20 and 17 respectively, so I think that's a pretty good mark for your defense, but in both those games, your offense did not get going. Now, it's important to add that Justin Herbert was dealing with some injuries there, so take that into account. Then after that Chargers versus Kansas City game, you would go on to beat the Denver Broncos, which I would venture to say is maybe their most impressive win of the season so far, because Denver's somewhat of a okay team this year. However, after beating Denver, you lost by 2 points to the Arizona Cardinals, who are somehow, someway actually a good team. And then since then, you dominated both the Saints and the Browns. Both those teams are on their backup quarterbacks and are just terrible teams. So far this year, their victories are against the Las Vegas Raiders, the Carolina Panthers, the Denver Broncos, New Orleans Saints, and the Cleveland Browns. All 5 of those teams, I would venture to say, maybe outside of Denver, are just bad teams. And their 3 losses this year are against the 3 best teams that they've had on their schedule: the Cardinals, the Chiefs, and the Steelers. The Cardinals are a borderline playoff team. The Chiefs are a playoff team and probably going to make a deep playoff run. And then the Steelers, kind of the same thing. That's a playoff lock, let's just be honest. Again, I do want to give them their credit and give them their flowers for how they've been performing on the defensive end. That is not a lie. You've held both Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Arizona, who also have a good offense, to less than 20 points in each of those games. So again, on the offensive end is really where I'm focused at here. I'm a little bit worried about them. I'm not worried about the defense. The defense has been playing very well. To me, I just want to see this team actually go up against quality opponents and beat those quality opponents, because so far they haven't done that this year. Yes, the Saints looked good to start the year off, but that team has fallen off a cliff. Cleveland, sure, they beat the Baltimore Ravens a few weeks ago, but that was a fluky performance, let's just be honest. And again, as I mentioned earlier, their best victory is against the Denver Broncos, who are starting Bo Nix at quarterback, who is a rookie. And let's just be honest, that Broncos team is just all not that much talented. Again, I want to reiterate that this has been a team that a lot of people have put in their top 10 power rankings. I have kept them off my top 10 for a reason, and pretty consistently every single week I get comments asking why the Chargers are not in my top 10, and I just tell them, you guys haven't beaten anybody who's even close to being a playoff contender outside of Denver, but again, it's Denver. I don't want this video to come off as a bit of a hit piece here because quite frankly, their schedule hasn't been built around a whole bunch of good teams. They can only play who they're going up against. But again, even in these performances against good teams, I haven't felt like they've been really challenging them and actually pushing to win those games. That game against the Cardinals was ugly. That Chiefs game, while promising in the first half, was ugly in the second half. And that Steelers game, that team just never really felt that close to beating them. Again, I like Justin Herbert. I like their head coach. I think their defense is awesome. I think J.K. Dobbins is good. But this team just has a couple just major flaws, especially in the receiving core and in the tight end room, and just not having a bunch of offensive playmakers to surround Justin Herbert to actually make me feel like they are a legitimate contender or playoff team. I know I get kind of named a LA Chargers hater, and I kind of feel like I consistently hate on the Chargers, but this is kind of the reason why I feel like the Chargers are always at the butt end of these type of videos, because they go up against bad teams and they dominate them, but they're not beating any good teams. It's kind of the same thing I've been saying the entire offseason. I've been saying that I thought this team would be good, but I didn't think they'd be great. And a lot of people really gave me a lot of feedback on that, disagreeing. And hey, I think your defense is great, but I'm really worried about how this offense has performed against good teams. Now, if there's any sort of good news about this LA Chargers team is that their schedule is really not that difficult even moving forward. They've had a really easy first 8 weeks, and I think moving forward, the schedule is also pretty easy because this upcoming week, you have the Tennessee Titans, who are again one of the worst teams in the entire NFL. Then I will say the next 5 games after that does get a little bit more challenging, and this is really where we're going to know how good this Chargers team is. Because after that Titans team, you have the Bengals. I know the Bengals are like 4-6 or 4-5 or whatever they are, but that's a good Bengals team, let's just be honest. Then you have the Baltimore Ravens, one of the best teams in the NFL. The Atlanta Falcons, probably going to win their division, a really good team. Then you have your rematch with the Kansas City Chiefs, another awesome team that could probably win a Super Bowl. Then after that, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who hopefully at that point will be a little bit more healthy and maybe a better team at that point. But then after that, you have the Denver Broncos again, the New England Patriots, and the Las Vegas Raiders again. So over the course of the next 9 games, they have 4 very easy winnable games, and then 5 challenging games. These are games that should easily be close games that if LA can win some of these games, maybe could flip my perspective of this team. Is it a tad bit too early right now to call this team the most overrated team in the NFL? Maybe, probably 100%. But until I see this Chargers team actually go in there and be a quality opponent like the aforementioned Ravens or the Chiefs or the Bucks or the Falcons or the Bengals or whoever, I don't really think I can call this team a playoff contender. Again, as I mentioned throughout the video, I like a bunch of the pieces on this team. I just want to see this team actually go out there on the field and perform at a high level against good teams, because so far this year, they just haven't really done that. Whenever this team has been tested, they haven't passed those tests, and I want to see them pass those tests, and we're going to figure this out within the next 6 weeks, because they're going to have a bunch of tests that they're going to have to answer, and if they continue to fail them, then I just got to be honest, I don't think this team is going to be that much this year. I think in those 5 games against the Bengals, Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs, and Bucks, if they can go like 3-2 or 4-1 in that stretch, I'll feel really good about this Chargers team. But if they go like 1-4 or 2-3 during that stretch, and if their 2 wins are against like the Buccaneers and the Bengals, then I don't know how I'm going to really feel about this Chargers team. I think I'll probably just stay on business here and just keep talking about them in this sort of way. This is a Chargers fan base that I think should be proud of their team because of how drastically different this team has performed, especially on the defensive end. Again, I want to give them their flowers. That defense has been awesome this year. Even if they have been going up against bad teams, they've held every team in check. That includes Patrick Mahomes and Justin Fields and Kyler Murray. I just think it's important that we remain level-headed about this team and talk about them in a realistic manner, because when you start talking about this team as one of the best teams in the NFL, I don't think it really makes a whole bunch of sense because they haven't beaten anyone, and I want to see them beat those good teams. So until then, I'm going to keep the Chargers off my top 10, and I'm sure other people are going to disagree, and some will agree or, you know, of course, have a lot of issues with it. But if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button, and I love you guys. Peace.